Have you been having trouble nailing down your screen exposure times? Well, you won't be after today. One of the most common questions that I get asked and that I see posted in our print group pretty regularly are about screen exposure. And I get it, I've been there before. It actually makes total sense because the screen printing process can't start without making a screen first, which is not an easy thing to do. So that's the first hurdle that people newly coming into this have to overcome before they can enjoy the cooler parts about what we do, like putting rad designs on clothing. This can be super frustrating. My first day or two learning how to make a screen, I went through probably 15 or 16 before I got one to hold up even half okay. I've seen this get frustrating to the point where people just straight up want to quit, or they want to take the easy way out, start cutting corners and just asking around what exposure times people are using. Well, I've got bad news for you. It's not that easy. You can't just use someone else's exposure time because a lot of different factors go into exposure time. The main ones, of course, being the type of light source and the type of emulsion being used, but there's a lot of other factors too, like screen mesh count, screen mesh color, film density, how long those screens have been drying for, the ambient humidity in your shop, and a few others. You could honestly take two people with two identical setups and get completely different results because they're in a different environment. But before I freak you out with all this, there is a super easy way to nail this down so that you have a perfect exposure every single time. This right here is an exposure calculator, also known as a 21-step test or a Stuart strip, whatever you want to call it. You need one of these. These handy little bastards will seriously solve like 90% of the problems that you may have had when it comes to exposing screens by making it incredibly easy and efficient to dial in your exposure times. I don't care if you're a beginner or a pro, every single printer should have at least one of these in their toolbox, and anyone who says that they don't need one is probably full of shit. There are, of course, a bunch of different free exposure calculators out there that I always see people resorting to, but they're not the same as this. They require doing a step wedge test, which is an entirely different thing, and in my opinion is both very unreliable and extremely time consuming. These little things can be found at pretty much any screen print supplier for anywhere between 10 to 20 bucks and will blow any other testing method out of the water. And that's not a very big investment to make when it comes to making your job easier and your work better. And I've made it even easier for you by finding one of these and linking it down in the description below. I've been wanting to test out a new emulsion for a while now, so this is the perfect opportunity to show you guys how this works because there's a pretty good chance that my exposure times are gonna have to be totally different from what they were. I'm testing out Ulana Orange today on some 230 mesh screens. I've heard a lot of good things about this stuff and it being an amazing photopolymer emulsion in low-powered light sources like this is. So I figured I'd buy a gallon of it to try out since I'm bringing back the Bushido long sleeve for another run and I'm making a T version of it, which means I have a lot of damn screens to make. So let's get into this. So the way this works is incredibly simple. You've got a gradient with 21 steps of varying UV blocking density. What we're looking for after the screen is exposed and washed out is for the first 7 of these steps to be left behind. If you have those 7 steps, it means that this is an optimally exposed screen. If you're under 7 steps, it means that you're underexposed. And if you're over 7 steps, it means that you're overexposed. And there's little multiplication formulas on the package for this thing that tell you how to adjust your time to get to that 7th step based on which step it lands on. Pretty easy, right? This makes for way less guesswork and way less failed screens so that you can get your exposure times dialed in quickly and know that it's solid. You just take this thing and place it anywhere in your screen that it's not going to interfere with your artwork. So I'm going to be using this set of screens for a chest and a back print, so I've got this image placed a little bit lower on the screen than I normally would to give me that bit of flexibility so that I can just move the screen around rather than move all my palettes. So I'm going to place this thing towards my top registration marks here where I'm just going to tape them off later anyways. You're obviously going to want to use these things figuring out your initial exposure times, but you're also going to want to use them anytime that you switch to a different emulsion, different screen mesh, anything like that. You can run them on every screen in production if you really need that added bit of confidence, or you can do like what I do and just randomly drop them in a screen every month or two just to make sure things are still where they should be. Now this first one is literally going to be a total guess, so just wing it. The calculator will tell you what to do afterwards. But I can say if you're using a light source with similar output power to this, then with a photopolymer emulsion you can start off probably around a minute or so, and with a dual cure I would say 3.5 to 4 minutes. That'd be a good starting range to figure it out. With a 230 mesh screen and the photopolymer emulsion that I usually use, my exposure time in here is 50 seconds, so I'm going to start off with that and see where that takes me. I kind of hope it doesn't land where it needs to land on the first try, or this is going to be a real short video. this right here is going to be a very important part to remember for this and for screen making in general, is that washout is a gradual process. Don't just get in there with the pressure washer full Rambo style right off the bat. Rushing into it thinking that the image should just immediately start washing out when it's hit with water is a mistake that pretty much everybody makes in the beginning, and they end up thinking that they're overexposed when they're using these calculators. I'm gonna be honest with you, I made this exact same mistake when I started out, and I did it for like 5 or 6 hours straight before I figured it out. You need to soak this bad boy for a little while to let that water eat away at any of the unexposed emulsion, and this will also give you a far more accurate reading on your calculator. If you go at it too fast, it may read out to you like you're overexposed when you're exactly where you need to be. Or if you go at it with too much pressure, you may just blow the whole thing out in general thinking you're underexposed when that's actually not the case. I usually hit it with low pressure water first on the front and back a few times and give it a minute to kind of soak in and eat away at it until I start to see the emulsion fall away, and then I'll grab the pressure washer and finish the job. Okay, I didn't nail it on the first try. The video doesn't have to end here. I was really close though. You can see I landed at the 8th step. We're looking for 7 steps, so I'm just a little teeny tiny bit overexposed. But this thing retained all of its detail, and there is some very fine detail in here, especially in this little eyepiece type of deal. There's some razor thin lines that there is no way in hell I would have ever exposed with the photopolymer emulsion that I usually use. That's why I've always had to use a dual cure for this design specifically, but now I can switch to this. So quick little product review on Ulana Orange. Yeah. But you know, good enough is just not the way we do things around here. We're looking for perfect. We want that 7 steps exactly. So the little formula on the package tells me that since I'm 1 step over, I need to multiply my original exposure time of 50 seconds by 0.70, which leaves us at 35 seconds. I will say though that the formula, it's not super accurate once you get within that 1 step range of being perfect. So I'll usually take that time and I'll just cut it in half or a little bit over, somewhere in there. So it's telling me to subtract 15 seconds from my original time, so normally I'd take 8, 7, whatever off. I think I'll just cut it down to 10. I'll put my exposure to 40 seconds at this one, and we'll see how it goes. There we go, we got 7 solid steps on this thing, which means this is an optimally exposed screen, and it only took us 2 tries to get it. I sat here and hammered this thing with way more pressure than I normally would, just to make sure that that 7th step wasn't gonna bust out of there, and just the very bottom nut hair of it started to kind of crumble away a little bit, so that tells me I'm just gonna kick up my exposure time an extra 2, maybe 3 seconds, and then these things are gonna be solid as hell. I can move into production with that exposure time on this screen mesh. So there we go. Figuring out your screen exposure times really doesn't have to be this super difficult, super frustrating thing. And if you're using an exposure calculator, it isn't. I've been seeing a lot of people having trouble figuring this out lately, so I figured I'd put this together real fast to hopefully help a lot of you guys out and fast track you towards making some awesome stuff. And if you're having trouble finding one of these, like I said earlier, there's a link to one down in the description below for like 11 or 12 bucks or something like that. Pick one up, you will not regret it. And by the time you're watching this, the Bushido long sleeve and t-shirt will be in stock for sale in the Rogue Lab store, linked also in the description. Make sure if you want one of these, you jump on it real quick, because the 2 times I've stocked it, they've sold out in like 5 or 10 minutes. So if you want one, pick it up quick and support the channel. Help us make more of these rad videos to help people out. But I've got 8 more screens to expose to make these shirts, and 4 more screen meshes to figure out my exposure times for now using this new emulsion. So I'm gonna get my ass back to work. Hopefully this helped you guys out. Thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one. So, whoa, I'm rolling away. Son of a bitch. I need to like jam something on these wheels. Damn card out of my shot. Oh, hey, embroidery machine. Sorry about that. Oh, holy shit, that was a cool shot. Every time. You know, you'd think after all these years of making videos that I would remember to put my phone on silent when I'm filming, but nope. You know what? That's a genius idea. I'm gonna put a friggin' stand on my tripod to hold my notes so I can film these things faster. Holy shit, that's smart. I don't know why I didn't think of that a long time ago. Getting a real nice suntan making this thumbnail right now, trying to line this up with the UV lights on. Was I even recording? Oh my god, I was sitting there talking for like 20 minutes and it wasn't even recording. Ah, it's the worst. I forget everything I said now.